Guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be doing another book review and I'll be reviewing the book Artemis by Andy Weir, and it was the book of the month selection from November. So yeah, let's just get right into it. So as always, I'll be starting with my non-spoiler / summary of this book. This book is set in outer space, specifically on the moon at a city called Artemis, where the protagonist Jasmine Bashara lives, aka Jazz, and she's actually been living there since 6. So basically she's been living there her entire life. So in Artemis there are 4 different bubbles. One is Aldrin, which is the place where rich, wealthy tourists go and visit. Conrad, which is where Jazz currently lives and is known for its sleazy neighborhoods. Shepherd, which is where the wealthy, rich Artemisians live. And then there's the Bean, which is where Jazz, hopefully in the future, that's where she wants to live. So in the beginning of the story, Jasmine is known as a smuggler. She smuggles in contraband such as lighter fluids, tobacco, cigars, etc. Basically anything that is considered flammable is contraband up there, because if it can erupt into flames, it is extremely dangerous for them. And one of her most reliable and frequent client is a wealthy billionaire called Trond Landvik, and he lives in the city with only his daughter and his live-in maid. And because of their long and lasting relationship so far, he somehow introduces her to this grander scheme where he wants to somehow take over the aluminum industry by the Sanchez. Also, side note here, what I found really interesting about this book is how all the industries are somehow owned by various ethnic groups. For example, the aluminum industry was owned by the Sanchez, which is they're Brazilian, and life support, they're owned by the Vietnamese, and the welding industry is owned by the Saudi Arabians, etc. It's just really interesting because the book described it how somehow one person gets onto this job and then they like it and then they start recruiting people that they know, and somehow it always ends up being their own ethnic group. So this lunar city actually ends up having various ethnic groups who somehow all own separate industries. So I just thought that was really interesting. So anyways, back to the summary. So once Trond introduced this grand scheme of his, at first Jazz really didn't want to do anything about it because she thought it was too much of a high risk, and she's more of, I mean, she's a smuggler. She's not really known for elaborate ruses, and she didn't want to think about how to get there with an EVA suit, which is a space suit, that's how they call it. And she didn't really seem that the risk was worth it. And of course, Jasmine ends up changing her mind once the price tag was revealed, because Jasmine, as we all know from the flap of this book, she's in desperate need of money, and the price tag for this job was 1 million slugs, which is their currency. She ends up coming up with this foolproof plan, and very elaborate by the way, and decides to go with it. And she almost succeeds too. She gets most of it done, and then something happens, and then she realizes that she's actually in deep shit now. And as the book continues, she finds herself as a pawn in this elaborate conspiracy plan to take control over Artemis. And now she has to figure out a way to keep Artemis safe and fix this whole mess by using her intelligence and wits, as well as finally enlisting some people. That's essentially what this book is about. My 2 cents are that this book was friggin' fantastic. There were a lot of scientific terms, you know, littered throughout the book, and the author Andy Weir really goes into detailing how things were working. So there were a few times when I'm not a huge science person. I love sci-fi, but I'm not a science geek, and there are many times when he was describing how, you know, the reasoning behind why Jasmine was doing something or why something could go wrong, etc. I didn't really understand it fully because it was too sciencey for me. I don't know if maybe it's just me, but I end up skimming a lot of those areas because I can't really understand it, or it didn't really seem that interesting to me. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still fantastic though. It by no means limited my experience with this book, so I definitely still recommend it. And if you're a science geek, you will definitely love this book, because there were definitely a lot of those terminologies out there and explanations that is not really for the layman average person like me. And overall though, it was very engrossing. I found myself captivated. In the beginning it was a bit slow, I would say, but it was never boring. So that's basically what this book is about. If this sounds interesting, definitely go check it out, because you will not regret it. It is a fabulous book and I really enjoyed it. And if you've read it already, then continue on with me to the spoiler section. So for this book review, I'm going to mostly focus on the characters because I honestly think they were the stars of this book rather than the plot or the writing style or whatever. I mean, the plot itself was pretty straightforward. I mean, in the beginning, honestly, if you read the flap, you already kind of know what's going to happen. You know that Jazz got herself into this scheme, which ends up being a conspiracy plan, and obviously there's a few plot twists here and there, but for the most part, it's relatively straightforward. What's most interesting to me, I mean, obviously the book, what was most interesting in terms of the plot was how she was going to get things done and how she was going to fix things. That was definitely the most interesting part, but that was it for the plot. Honestly, the plot itself was not super unoriginal. I would say the characters were definitely the most interesting, and that's honestly the reason why I love this book, because of the characters. Definitely not the plot or the writing or anything like that. It's my #1 characters for sure. So I'm going to be spending this book review gushing about all the characters that I love and why I love them. So Jazz, the main protagonist of this book, I absolutely love her. I think she was funny, she was sarcastic, she was real, and she was just a really good character. And the main reason why I love her, other than her sarcastic and humor, is her intelligence. She is so smart, and the fact that she's able to think of all of these things, you know, literally on her feet, is just amazing. There are times when, I mean, you have to think about this, as living on the moon, there are so many dangerous things that can happen where you're done, you know, like if something rips in your EVA suit or something, you're dead, you know, or if you accidentally disconnect the airlock or whatever, for whatever reason, you're also dead. Or if you light up something and it goes out of control, you're also dead. So there's so many things that's even more dangerous than it is on Earth, and the fact that she's able to think things through kind of in a very methodical manner and a logical manner, and within a few seconds too, is really incredible for me. There were a few times in this book where like, something went wrong and one of her extra oxygen tanks was gone. So she ended up having to recalculate, literally, okay, how can I get this done so I can get back to base with enough oxygen, otherwise, you know, she's dead. So she was able to recalculate everything and basically come up with a backup plan within minutes, and I think that's really incredible, and I really liked her for that. And as for the other characters, they're all definitely more minor / secondary characters, but they're all so adorable that I can't not talk about them. For example, my favorite actually was Rudy Du Bois. He is basically the enforcer / police officer in the city, and he's such a goody two-shoe that I really like him, because he's just so opposite compared to Jazz. He does things by the books, and he's been on her case because he knows that she smuggles. He just can't find any evidence about it, so he's been on her ass this entire time trying to get her deported and, you know, sent back to Earth. And it's just really funny because the dynamic between them is really entertaining to read. They don't like each other, yet you can tell there's some sort of tension, like, you know, attractiveness between the two. And I was actually hoping that they would end up together, because how funny would that be? But clearly I think they're just too different that if they were together, I think they'd be fighting all the time. But I really liked him, and even at the end when, you know, obviously he's a goody two-shoe and he does things by the books, but when Jazz's life was in danger, he helped her, and he was able to risk his life and was able to, you know, set things aside and aid her instead, which I like that a lot, because at the end of the day, for him, the citizen of the city is far more important to him than, you know, the rules. And then obviously, talking about nerdy guys, I have to talk about Martin Svoboda. I'm pretty sure I butchered his last name, but he is like this cutest little puppy guy I've ever met or read about. He is so adorable. He's incredibly geeky and incredibly nerdy, and I can just imagine his face when it lights up when something like sciencey is being, you know, talked about. And his energy just comes out of the book. It's so alive, and the way how the author writes him is really, really intense, and I absolutely love it. And the best part about him is that it's so contagious. His energy and his love for science is just so catching. Even for me, when he talks about it, I'm like, okay, I guess I have to read this part because it's so interesting. It's and for me, like I said before in like the summary part, that I'm not a huge science person, and I skimmed a lot of areas where the author was doing some like science explanations and whatnot, but every time Martin was speaking, I was like, okay, I have to listen to this because it's so contagious and I have to pay attention. And at the end, so they end up together. I mean, that's the way how the book is hinted, that Martin and Jazz ends up being together. But honestly, the relationship was a bit strange for me. It seems at the beginning that they just worked together a few times and it's a purely work relationship. But then somehow he was the one that Jazz went to when she was in deep shit, and he was kind of, you know, pissed off in a way, or very hurt when she didn't treat him as a good friend. But for me in the beginning, it didn't seem like they were really good friends. At least that's not the impression that I got. But like once that distinction was made, like, oh, like, you know, you're my friend and like whatever, I was like, oh, okay, maybe like there's something more can be done here. And clearly at the end they, like, you know, kind of had this thing together. I'm not really sure, it's just hinted at. And I hope they end up together because that'd be really cute, because Jazz is so smart, and the only other person who's smart enough to compare to her is him. So if they are together, I feel like they'll end up being this like incredibly smart duo or something. Another character that I really, really adored was actually Dale. In the beginning, he seemed kind of like a side character, a very minor character actually, and it wasn't until things started to, you know, hit the fan when the history of Dale and Jazz came to light, and the reason why they're no longer friends. Actually, they used to be like really good friends, but because apparently Dale like stole her boyfriend, so her boyfriend's gay, or her ex-boyfriend's gay, and because of that they became like, or she really hated him and didn't like him, which I mean understandable, but he still, you know, saved her many times and risked his job and his life for her various times as well. So at the end of the day, I really, really liked him, and like it was obvious at the end that he still really cared about her as a friend and was willing to help put her plan to save Artemis in place. The last character that I really want to mention is Kelvin, her Earth pen pal. He was definitely an interesting character because the only interaction we really had with him specifically was via emails that Artemis and him started writing since they were 9. So he's actually like been her best and longest friend since she was 9 years old. I think at this point she's like 20 something. I'm not even sure, to be honest. It's not really mentioned in this book. And he's the one that she trusts the most, and when something would happen and she was in deep shit, he was the one to wire money to her without questions and was just like, please be safe. I'm like, just let me know what happens, or let me know what's going on when, you know, things get sorted out. And that's a type of friend that I really admire. So I mean, his interaction with her was definitely more, you know, subtle, I guess, but I still think he played a major role in the overall book. And obviously there's more characters in this book that I would like to highlight, such as Jazz's father, or Fidelis and Ngugi, the administrator, etc. But honestly, if I continue talking about all the characters and why I like them, this review would never end. So I just highlighted a few of the characters that I really, really liked. So I guess I will talk a little bit about the plot in general. It's very fast, very addictive. It's so easy to get sucked in and be completely captivated with what's going on because it's so action-packed. And as for the writing style, I mean, the writing style is very good. I mean, the characters, I think the way how he captured all the characters and brought them to life was really important and fantastic. He did a fantastic job on that, without a doubt. The one thing, like I've been saying over and over again, was how he tended to do too much of explanations in terms of the science explanations. But generally, I understand why. Obviously, without all those explanations, you won't really understand what's going on or why or how is this even possible. So for me, even though they were a little bit hard to understand or hard for me to just actually read the whole like few paragraphs on it, I still learned a lot, and I definitely learned more about lunar gravity versus Earth's gravity and the air pressure there and the air pressures here, because there were a lot of mentions on those things. So overall, I really enjoy this book. I highly recommend it to everyone. Even though, like, for me, I actually never read The Martian, I just watched the movie, but when I heard that this book was coming out, I got really excited, and I don't know why I was so excited. Anyway, I didn't even read the first book, so his writing style could have been completely terrible and I would not even have noticed or have known, but I was really excited for this book and was really excited to actually get my hands on it. And when I read it, I was like, okay, this book did not disappoint me at all. And honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think I could ever live in a lunar city. I think I would much prefer to live on Earth, or at least a place that has oxygen, because I don't think I can live in a place where if I accidentally step outside, I would die. So I think I would rather much stay on Earth, or someplace that has similar oxygens or something. In a faraway planet, I'm okay with that too, but I don't think Earth, the moon, really is for me. So anyway, that's all I have to say for Artemis. If you like this review, please do give me a thumbs up and subscribe down below. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But that's it for today, guys. Thank you. Bye.